Jimmy Livingston was born with a rare condition that left him without any immune system, meaning even the smallest germ could be fatal. Because of this, he's been forced to live in isolation, unable to touch anything unless it's been completely decontaminated. To keep him alive, Jimmy must spend his life inside a bubble-like plastic sphere. His mother, Mrs. Livingston, is extremely protective of him. In fact, Jimmy wasn't allowed to leave the hospital until he was 4 years old. Once he was, his parents brought him home inside his bubble. His room at home has a large bubble as well, allowing him to move around inside it. This bubble has special attached gloves that his parents use to touch him from the outside. Every toy Jimmy has is carefully decontaminated before it's placed inside his bubble. He's lived this way ever since. Mrs. Livingston, determined to keep him safe, never wants Jimmy to leave his bubble. She even tells him bedtime stories where the princess dies every time she's set free, as a way to scare him from wanting to leave. Jimmy is only allowed to watch one television channel and read one magazine, as his mother insists they are the only ones ever made. She even uses the bubble's attached gloves to cut his hair and give him hugs. Mrs. Livingston holds strong, nationalistic beliefs and teaches Jimmy only what she considers right, shaping his understanding of the world. Unfortunately, Jimmy doesn't know any different, so he simply accepts what she says. Despite being well known in his town as the Bubble Boy, Jimmy isn't treated kindly by the neighborhood kids. They mock him by wrapping themselves in plastic and teasing him from outside his house. Mrs. Livingston regularly has to chase them away. Jimmy's food is prepared at home, and even that must go through a decontamination system before he can eat it. Now at 16, this is the only life Jimmy has ever known. Jimmy's childhood was typical, filled with excitement, like receiving an electric guitar instead of a car. However, his life took a turn when he spotted Chloe, a girl his age, moving in next door. He developed strong feelings for her but was unsure how to express them, and his inexperience with love and girls added to his confusion. His mother noticed his fascination and warned him with a cautionary tale about a boy who died after interacting with a promiscuous girl. For years, Jimmy observed Chloe from a distance, and she began to notice his gaze, creating an unspoken connection between them. Jimmy was experiencing unfamiliar physical changes, leaving him bewildered and unsure of what was happening to his body. One morning, he woke up with an erection and, frightened by the unknown, he reacted impulsively and hurt himself. He sought comfort from his mother, who tried to calm him down by having him recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Meanwhile, Chloe's friends teased Jimmy, labeling him the Bubble Boy, but Chloe herself appeared to be protective of him. Chloe took the initiative to visit Jimmy's home, and Mr. Livingston welcomed her in. She was captivated by the network of plastic tubes surrounding the house and decided to explore, tracing the tubes to Jimmy's room. Jimmy, feeling anxious and inexperienced, was surprised by her presence, as his mother was the only woman he had ever interacted with. Chloe showed interest in Jimmy's guitar, and he attempted to teach her how to play, using his gloved hands to guide her. However, his nervousness got the better of him, and he suddenly began reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. From that day forward, Jimmy and Chloe became inseparable, spending every day together. Despite Mrs. Livingston's disapproval of their friendship, she was unable to intervene. A series of heartwarming moments unfolded as they grew closer, including Chloe gifting Jimmy a guinea pig for his birthday and organizing a Halloween party in his room. However, their relationship took a dramatic turn on Chloe's birthday, when she, intoxicated and emotional, snuck into Jimmy's room through the window. She attempted to enter his protective bubble, confessing that she could no longer resist her feelings for him. Chloe's attempt to enter Jimmy's bubble ended with her passing out, and the scene transitions to her prom night. Her boyfriend, Mark, arrives to pick her up, leaving Jimmy heartbroken. Mark tries to offer Jimmy a cigarette, but Jimmy's naivety shines through as he doesn't recognize it. Jimmy witnesses Mark and Chloe's intimate moment through his window, further solidifying his feelings of longing. The next day, Chloe visits Jimmy, showcasing her engagement ring and sharing the news of her impending marriage to Mark at Niagara Falls. Jimmy conceals his disappointment, hiding his true emotions behind a mask of indifference. Jimmy receives a gift from Chloe, but he initially disregards it and returns her guinea pig, telling her to leave. Chloe departs in tears. Later, Jimmy discovers the gift is a snow globe with a heartfelt message, which prompts him to rush to Niagara Falls to halt the wedding. He diligently works on creating a portable protective shield and eventually succeeds. Jimmy secretly leaves his house without his parents' knowledge, thrilled to be on his first solo adventure. At the bus station, he realizes he has forgotten his money and can't buy a ticket. Attempting to cross the road, he is struck by a bus, but his protective bubble shield saves him from harm. The passengers from the bus offer him a ride, which Jimmy gratefully accepts, only to discover that they are members of a religious cult. After discovering the cult's true nature, Jimmy is forcibly ejected from the bus. Unbeknownst to him, the cult arrives at their destination and mistakenly identifies a round man inside a globe as their savior, realizing too late that Jimmy was the actual chosen one. Meanwhile, Jimmy encounters a biker named Slim and shares his tale of heartbreak. Slim is moved by Jimmy's story and shares his own tale of lost love, pining for his former girlfriend Wildfire. He offers Jimmy a ride, and together they embark on a journey to Niagara Falls. Meanwhile, back home, Mrs. Livingston discovers Jimmy's absence and panics, prompting her and her husband to launch a search effort since the police won't act until 24 hours have passed. Elsewhere, Slim and Jimmy make a pit stop in Vegas to rest. Jimmy and Slim have a blast at a casino, but with time running out before the wedding, Jimmy decides to press on alone. He steals a scooter and speeds away, leaving Slim behind. During his journey, Jimmy encounters his parents, who attempt to stop him. In his haste, Jimmy gets into an accident, but his protective bubble saves him by bouncing him onto a moving train. There, he meets a group of performers from a freak show, who reveal they are being held captive by the sinister Dr. Freak. Jimmy encounters Dr. Freak, a dwarf, and unintentionally knocks him down with his bubble, liberating the other freaks in the process. Jimmy then resumes his journey to Niagara Falls. But his scooter becomes increasingly unreliable. Seeking alternative transportation, he enters a restaurant, where he witnesses police officers harassing a man named Pushpop. When Jimmy reveals he lacks immunity, the officers mistakenly believe he has a contagious illness and hastily flee the scene. In the midst of chaos, the restaurant erupts in flames, and Pushpop offers Jimmy a ride, agreeing to take him to Niagara Falls. Meanwhile, Mrs. Livingston tracks down Dr. Freak and learns of Jimmy's destination, prompting her to scold Chloe for driving Jimmy away. As she converses with Dr. Freak, the freaks outside steal her car. En route to Niagara Falls, Pushpop and Jimmy's journey is disrupted when they strike a cow on the road. Pushpop is distraught, as cows are revered in his religion, but Jimmy dismisses his concerns, citing his mother's words that Pushpop's religion is false. Pushpop, offended by Jimmy's dismissive comment about his religion, abandons him. Undeterred, Jimmy continues his journey and hitches a ride with an elderly man named Pippi. However, the next morning, Jimmy discovers Pippi has died at the wheel, causing the car to crash into a billboard. Shaken, Jimmy seeks refuge in a nearby grocery store and contacts Chloe, but Mark answers instead, taunting Jimmy that he is about to marry Chloe in just an hour. Crushed and defeated, Jimmy calls his mother to come and collect him. His parents arrive, and as they drive away, Mrs. Livingston steps out to use the restroom, allowing Mr. Livingston to have a heart-to-heart with Jimmy. They bond over Jimmy's experiences, and Mr. Livingston encourages Jimmy to persevere and not give up easily. Inspired by his father's words, Jimmy decides to make a last-ditch effort to stop the wedding and rushes off. Mrs. Livingston notices and follows him in their car, while the cult group, still on Jimmy's trail, also gives chase. Just as Jimmy needs help, Slim and his biker friends arrive on the scene, only to find themselves on a plane's runway. In a surprising twist, Slim locks eyes with Mrs. Livingston, his former lover, Wildfire. As chaos ensues, Jimmy seizes an opportunity to hitch a ride with an elderly pilot on a plane taking off from the runway. They soar towards Niagara Falls, but the plane crashes, sending Jimmy tumbling into the waterfall. Fortunately, his protective bubble saves him from drowning. Jimmy manages to escape the water and rushes to the wedding. Just as Chloe and Mark are about to seal their union, Jimmy bursts into the chapel, professing his love for Chloe. In a desperate bid to win her heart, Jimmy risks everything and ruptures his protective bubble to share a kiss with Chloe. However, this act of devotion comes at a great cost, and Jimmy collapses, lifeless. As Chloe tries to revive him, Mr. and Mrs. Livingston arrive at the scene. Mrs. Livingston is consumed by grief, believing her son has sacrificed his life for love. But Mr. Livingston intervenes, urging her to reveal a long-hidden truth. In a stunning revelation, Mrs. Livingston exposes the truth: Jimmy's supposed medical condition was a fabrication, a lie meant to shield him from the world's dangers. As the truth sinks in, Jimmy miraculously awakens, alive and well. He is shocked and bewildered by his mother's deception, but ultimately forgives her as she explains that her intention was to protect him from harm. The scene ends with Jimmy warmly embracing Chloe, met with applause from the crowd. The movie then jumps forward in time to show Jimmy and Chloe exchanging vows on their wedding day, surrounded by friends he made along the way. As the movie concludes, Jimmy and Chloe drive off into the sunset, embarking on their honeymoon adventure together.